August of 42. Yeah, in August of 42, was sent over to France.
No, start right from your campings, where you were sent and when they were going to send you overseas in 3 weeks and that kind of stuff. You went up
See, I can't remember where
to Vermont.
yeah, I was shipped to Vermont. I was there for 3 weeks because it was a National Guard outfit and they were being sent overseas right away. And one of the guys didn't like the idea that we would be sent to the front lines without any training. So he called our senator, and the senator heard about that we were being sent over there without training, so he had them pull us out. We didn't have to go with the National Guard over there. So then they turned around and I think I was shipped to Mississippi.
Mississippi.
I was in Mississippi for
Yeah, I don't know
how long it was. But eventually,
I know you said you did guard duty and it was cold.
yeah, guard duty and then I was shipped to Bermuda. And I stayed there for a while, which was a nice place to be. It was, the climate was nice around in Bermuda, you know. I was there. Then they shipped me back to the States again. I forgot where I went the second time.
Then I think you went to North Carolina.
Then I was shipped to North Carolina.
Beach patrol.
And beach patrol. I was there for a while. I was lucky I didn't actually have to go out on the beach too much. And then I went to, and then I went to Florida and was on the beach patrol in Florida. And then from Florida, they shipped me, I think went to,
Then you went overseas, because that's when I was down there.
what's that?
You went overseas from Florida, because
Yeah.
that's when I was down there.
Yeah, I was, from Florida I went overseas, landed in France in the wintertime. And I was supposed to have had overshoes. They took us in a camp that was out in a plowed field, and the tents were flopping with the wind and there was no heat in them or nothing. The ground was froze, it had about 2 inches of snow on it. Well, you can about imagine running around on a plowed field with a couple inches of snow. You can imagine what it does to your shoes. My shoes at night, they'd freeze so solid I couldn't get my feet on in them. So then I finally got smart and I took my shoes off at night. I spread them apart, pulled the laces all loose so I could get my feet in them. Well, then my feet would, the next morning I'd put my shoes on. Well, then my feet had to thaw out the boots so I could lace them, close them back up again. Well, then I had what they call trench foot, because your feet have been froze and they've been wet, and under those conditions you keep them very long way, you get what they call trench foot. So they put me in a hospital. I was in a hospital for about a week while they thawed my feet out and got rid of the black scum that was starting to form on my feet.
Like gangrene.
Yeah, because after they turn black, it turns into gangrene, and after you get gangrene, they have to amputate. Well, I was in there with black feet, but being that I caught it just in time, it didn't turn into gangrene. But today I still suffer from it. But I was there for a while. Then they took me off out of the hospital. I moved to the front lines, just behind the front lines, and they had our duffel bags with us. Everybody had their clothes with them. I was unfit for duty to be on the front line, so they put me on limited duty to guard these bags that were stored in a building. I and another guy there was three of us, and we had to eat dry rations out of those, they were in a square box about there and about that thick.
K rations.
K rations, and we had to live on them all the time we were there. I can never forget it. This one guy we were with, he says, you know something? He says, we're not going to make it. I said, oh, quit talking like that. I said, we'll make it. I said, a lot of other ones make it, we can make it. He says, no sir, he says, we're not going to make this when we get back on duty again, you know. Of course, it wasn't long, why, yeah. We went back on duty on the front line then. I was pretty lucky. I was on the gun crew, 57 millimeters. I didn't have too much to do. I mean, there wasn't too many German tanks that we had to shoot up, so I was pretty lucky. But that one guy that was telling me all that time, he says, we was going to make it. It wasn't too long afterwards, so the word gets around in an outfit like that. My golly, I found out that they did find him. He was shot on the side of the road, laying there. And so he had the feeling 2-3 weeks that he wasn't going to make it, and that's just what happened. He did not make it. And I was pretty lucky. I was on that gun crew. And I was on a vehicle most of the time. And we didn't see too much action, because once we had crossed the Rhine River, we put our duffel bags in a winery again. And I don't know, part of my duty was with them duffel bags. It was guarding them, had to move them from place to place. We put them in this winery, and this winery had the French had been making wine and champagne and stuff like that down in the basement. They had these great big barrels. They were about 8 feet across and 12 feet long. And they were filled with grape juice and turning it into champagne and wine and whatever they were doing. But it was, duffel bags were stored in there. And then from there, they left the bags in there. They never made me stay and guard them or anything. They just figured they were safe in there. And I went back on the front line with my gun crew again, and we crossed the Rhine River, which was kind of scary because it flows at 7 miles an hour, and they put a pontoon bridge across it to get the vehicles across. Well, this is already done before I come along with the gun crew, And so we had to get to the other side, and here we got on that dumb pontoon bridge, and we went on, and we went like this and like this, because it was flowing 7 miles an hour, and the center of it was just a big bowl. And that was a wild river that was flowing at 7 miles an hour. So I was pretty lucky I didn't have to do too much.
But then, tell them what your commander said when you got by the concentration camp.
I forgot what that was.
He said, don't go look.
Oh, yeah. We were fighting our way across, and we got to a concentration camp that we was going to liberate. And they turned around, and officer come up to me, and he says, he had been over there, and he says, don't go and to look at that concentration camp, as the Germans had turned around and shot everybody that was in that concentration camp, and their bodies were laying all over the place. I was close enough I could see bodies laying off, but I was, I suppose, a city block away or a little better, so I couldn't see the actual, their faces and everything. I could just see that there was a body laying outside of the building there, out in the yard they had there. And so I didn't go and look, because he says, it'll just bother you. He says, it's bothering me. He says, I wish I'd have never seen it. But then, let's see.
Then you went through Luxembourg and you eventually met the Russians.
Yeah, we went through Luxembourg, across the Rhine River, and by then the Germans wasn't too powerful anymore, because they'd been fighting. All these different units been going across the Rhine River, and I went with my gun crew, and of course I was on that gun crew. We didn't have too much to do, because there wasn't many German tanks anymore to shoot up, but the line companies were doing taking the prisoners and stuff along as we went across Germany. Well, we were taking prisoners right and left, going across there. And one place the troops had to go across, and them officer, this was a flowing river. It wasn't too big, I suppose, probably about 50 feet wide. But it was flowing like crazy. I mean, it was just there. And one of the officers says, well, we got to get across. He says, go ahead and see if you can wade it. Well, 2 or 3 guys stepped off of that bank into that water. And that's the last they saw of them, because that water just washed them away, because they were carrying the M16 rifles, they weigh 9 pounds apiece. And then you had your pack and your ammunition belt, which you carried around you. You probably had 40, 50 rounds of ammunition in your belt. So after 3, 4 guys drowned right in front of them, stopped everybody from going across. They waited for the engineers to come, and they put a pontoon bridge in again, which they had to have in order to get our trucks and guns across. Well, there was one place there, a couple of young Germans had the German 88 rifle, a long gun, and they were shooting at us. Finally we shot back, and they got scared of it, the fact that we were shooting them, so they started running away, and they run down towards us, and we took them prisoners. Well, it was getting towards night when we took them prisoner, and we went into this little town, and we were going to spend the night in there. So my company was the one that shot back at them, so we took them, was the one that ended up with them as prisoners, you know. And we went in this town, and we went into this one building, and it says, well, we'll spend the night here. And of course, you spend the night in a place where you have a bunch of guards on the outside watching, and they watching us pretty close. I mean, for Germans to come around. They didn't come around, but in the meantime, some Air Force guys was following the troops along too, and a couple of them got shot by the Germans. And of course, in the meantime, we had those two prisoners. We took them in the building with us, where we was going to spend the night. We put them in one room and locked the doors, and one guy stood guard over them to see that they didn't escape. Well, in the night, why, weird guys moving around. In the meantime, I had went through a German factory. They made a little P-38 automatic pistol. At that time, I was supposed to carry a 45. Well, this thing was built on the same principle as a 45, except it was smaller. It fit right in your hand. And so I went through this place, and I knew the gun real well. So I took my helmet off, and I went down the assembly line, and I think I took for about 7 guns. I took 14 pistol grips. I took, I think, 7 or 8, whatever number of guns I was taking for. I took the frame, and then I took the firing cylinders, and the trigger, and the hammer, and I turned around and I took all the parts off that assembly line. I had them in this helmet. Well, we were going to spend the night there, so I turned around and sat down at my helmet, and I started putting them together. Well, I ended up, then I had 7, these automatic, 32 caliber automatics. Well, we went through, I was carrying them around in my backpack. And I kept one of them around, and it was kind of nice. I did pick up some ammunition that would fit that 32 automatic. So I thought, well, one of them I'm going to keep. So I loaded up the pistol, that automatic, and I kept it in my belt. Here, you know, well, we'd go sleeping at night. And you didn't know in the morning who was going to wake you up, whether it was a German or if it was going to be one of your guys that was coming and getting you up to go to work. So one time, one guy come in there, and I didn't recognize him, so I raced in and I got my little automatic, threw the switch off. And I was laying down, he was standing just like she is, right in front of me, and I was laying down. He didn't know it, but if he'd have started shooting at any of us guys laying there on the sleeping, he'd have got the second bullet because I'd have got him right then and there. Because, you know, what the heck you gotta do? You gotta play a safe game if you're gonna, in a situation like that. So, but anyway, we took them two guys, prisoners, and we was in this kind of a building, and we were guarding them, and pretty soon, guys knocked on the door, and he says, "We hear you got two prisoners." "Yeah, we got two prisoners." He says, "Well, we're on our way back to the rear echelon," and he says, "You want to get rid of them?" And my sergeant says, "Well, yeah." He says, "I don't want to babysit them characters all the time till we get rid of them." So he says, "Yeah." He says, "You're going to go back there. You take them." "Well, we don't want them." So, the Air Force guys, they took them. Well, we found out afterwards that we had been across first, then some of the, what we did to go, when we was going across Germany, one company would walk, and they'd walk fairly brisk. And the other companies would get in the trucks, and we'd follow behind. The first day, then the guys that would walk the one day would crawl in the trucks, and those that was in the trucks would get on the ground and start walking. And they rotated so that we could cover more ground faster, because the guy that was rested up one day or rest, you could walk pretty good the next day. But anyway, we had these two prisoners, the Air Force guys come on. "We'll take them back for you." Sure, we don't want them. And then the next morning, we were rid of them. We were glad of it. But then next morning, why some of the line companies come by. He said, "Oh," he says, you got a couple of them shot." "No, we didn't shoot anybody." "Oh, yeah," he said, "there's two dead ones laying on the side of the road." And then we found out afterwards that the Air Force guys had lost their lieutenant. Somebody had shot their lieutenant. So they were so mad, they turned around and they took those two and they shot them. They didn't even hardly get away from us before they shot them and left them on the side of the road. Then the rifle companies come along, we see it. They told us afterwards that they found them there.
Keep on going across Germany till you get to where the Russians.
Yeah. Well, we kept shuttling back and forth with the line companies. I was able to ride nearly all the time. Of course, I had bad feet anyway, so I had a good excuse to ride. And we didn't meet too much trouble. And we finally ended up meeting the Russians. And when my company met the Russians, the Germans didn't want to be taken prisoner by the Russians, because the Russians were to the point where they would just as soon as shoot them as to look at them. So when we got the Germans between the Russians were here and the Americans were here, and we were squeezing them together. Why, the Germans, they just turned around and walked towards us. And when I was there, why, there was as wide as the street was, which wasn't really too wide, but it was a pretty good wide street. It was so full of German prisoners that was coming back, giving up. They didn't want to give up to the Russians, so they wanted to give up to the Americans, so they did. And I watched there for half an hour as they were walking by. Being I was in the headquarters company, we was stationary at the time, and because it was the line companies that was squeezing them in, and they were walking back, being prisoners of the United States instead of being a prisoner of the Russians. But in the meantime, there was one time there that I had our duffel bags stashed in that winery there. I went back, they sent me back on the truck. You know, I was on limited duty while they sent me back on the truck to go get the duffel bags. So I went back to the duffel bags, and of course I loaded duffel bags, and it just so happened that I got a few cases of champagne and wine that got mixed up with the duffel bags. So when I got back to the company there, I would unload the duffel bags and give my buddies there a case or two of champagne and wine and stuff out of it. Then after that, they got rid of the prisoners, and we got rid of the prisoners, and they got them shipped back. And then my company was able to, at that time, Japan was still active yet, so they were going to ship us. We was a seasoned outfit by then, and they were going to ship us to the South Pacific. Well, it so happened it happened just long enough that they give us orders to go back to France from Germany, and go back to France, and we were going to be shipped out to the South Pacific. But during that particular time when we were on the road to France, Japan had more or less given up, so we didn't have to go to the South Pacific.
But then you were in Le Havre and you were helping deploy.
Yeah, we went to Le Havre, France, and just my outfit then, they made them as exporters of troops, and we stayed there for a while. And of course, in the meantime, I was still carrying them little 32 caliber automatics in my duffel bag. And one of the guys says, "Well, let's go to Paris." The outfit was shipping all these these troops, which would be going to the South Pacific. We'd have time off, so we'd go to Paris. Well, when I went to Paris, I put a little backpack on, and I put them little automatics in there, and I was peddling them because the Air Force guys was in Paris on leave, just like we was, you know. "You got any souvenirs from Germany?" Because they knew we had been in Germany. "Yeah. I was selling selling them little guns to the Air Force guys.
What about your barbering experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was also company barber there.
Well, but how it started?
Well, how it started.
You gave somebody a
Oh,
haircut.
yeah. One of my buddies was, when we was there in La Havre, one of the guys, oh, friend of mine, you wanted to cut you, because I need a haircut bad. He was just shaggy and all get out. You know, we had went in a barber shop there, got a set of clippers and a comb and scissors and stuff. I gave him a haircut. Trimmed him up nice and it came up now. Pretty soon I got called in the office. He said, I hear you cut so-and-so's hair. I said, yeah, I cut his hair. I said, I'm no barber. He says, well, you are now. So he made me official company barber. Well, they didn't let me charge, but I don't know, quarter or so for a haircut is all they allow me to charge. And of course, a lot of guys said money didn't mean much. You had it there, you had it in your pocket, but you couldn't buy nothing. There was nothing to buy.
You couldn't send it home.
But I was able to send some of it home, being that I was the company barber. Why they allowed me to send some of it home. And eventually we were there for a while till we shipped a lot of different companies home, back to the States. Then we got to come home.
You got to go by points. Whoever had the points, family and kids and whatever.
If you had a big family, you got to go home earlier. If you didn't have any family at all, they kept you in a little longer.
And I think it was Zwickau, wasn't it, where that concentration camp was?
Yeah, Zwickau, Germany was where the concentration camp was.
What he came home on was a Liberty ship, Victory ship.
Victory ship.
Madawaska Victory. And that came out in the paper.
One of those cheap things that was made in Seattle. They made them by the dozens. And you didn't know if it was going to fall apart or if it was going to make it.
It would be, yeah, and then they had a storm.
Yeah, and then getting close to New York, we thought we was getting along pretty good till we hit a storm just outside of New York. And boy, and then that tub was starting to buckle. You could hear them plates. I don't know what they did. They must have went like that because it was in that storm. But we managed to get into New York. And from New York, I think I come home.
Yeah, to Wisconsin, to
Yeah,
Camp
I went
McCoy.
to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, where I got discharged.
And that was in December of '45.
Yeah. So from 42 to 45,
What about the guy that had the hard cider locomotive, little train engine that he on a cart that he was heating? You guys were in a barracks, and it was cold out, and guys went down and asked him what he was selling.
Oh. Yeah, one place that we was in a building, and here this guy, we looked out the window there, and there was a guy there about half a block away, and he had a little smokestack, little pipe sticking up. We seen him. He was monkeying around. We couldn't tell what he was doing, but he was bending over and doing this and that. But when seen his little pipe was a little smoke coming out of it. or steam or whatever, we didn't know what it was, but there was something coming out of that pipe. So, a couple of guys says, let's go down and see what he's doing. And I was curious, we were all curious, wondering what the heck he was doing down there, stooping over there. That little stove looked like he was firing up all the time. So a couple of guys went down there, and we found out that he was distilling. The heck was it I said it was?
Hard cider, I think.
Yeah, but it was 100 proof or 90 proof, something like that, because you set fire to it.
Anyway, he was distilling liquor. I don't know what it was, but it was around 100 proof. And he turned around and was stirring it up and this and that. He had kind of a pitcher on a long handle. And he'd sip at it a little bit once in a while, but never seemed to take too much. You know. So the guys went down there, and he reached in there and he scooped them up and he handed it to them. Well, the guys, it was warm and smooth and tasty, and they just gulped it down, you know. He gave some to the other guy, and they all had 2, 3 dippers apiece, you know. Pretty soon, they come back to the barracks. We had to help them up the stairs. They couldn't climb the stairs. So they
Wasn't he from the hill country of Tennessee or Kentucky? Yeah. So he knew how to.
He says, man, he says, they didn't have that stuff back home in Tennessee. And they finally got them upstairs and they just about lost their stomachs. Because man, were they sick. There were 2 boys that almost had to have a doctor pump them out because man, they were.
Did any of it wreck their voice boxes? The alcohol?
Well,
Or wreck their throat?
I don't think they were able to talk.
They might be interested in the Indian that you made friends with on the way to camp, remember?
Oh, yeah. We was on a train going into camp, and I don't know why, but there was a couple of guys in the, got the idea they were gonna clean me out of my money or whatever I had, you know. And it so happened I was sitting with a big Indian. He was a big guy and he was tough, really a tough looking character, you know. And some guys come up there and they wanted me to go with them. I says, I ain't going with you. And finally this Indian says, he's staying here with me. He says, if you want him, he says, you walk over me first. And boy, he says, them guys, they turned around and they went back. They didn't want no part of me.
And wasn't he the one that drank shaving lotion and anything?
Yeah. Oh. He'd get this Aquavelva shaving lotion and drink it. I'd be surprised they'd get enough of that stuff in them. They could almost get drunk with it. Their breath would smell like crazy and they'd be drinking that stuff.
Did you tell them about the messenger that brought a message and he was given a reply, but he wouldn't go back unless he had a guard with him? The Jeep windshield had a bullet hole through it, and you ended up getting in the Jeep and going with him?
I still can't figure that one out.
There was a messenger that brought a message to the headquarters, and he wouldn't go back without somebody armed with him because he'd been shot at through the
Oh,
woods.
yeah. Yeah, the messenger in the Jeep come into, I was in headquarters company, I was in the office, or with the big shots most of the time, Here the Jeep guy comes in here with a message and brought it in. And colonel or captain or whatever he was wrote a message back. He says, here, he says, on the way back, he says, you take this message back. And that Jeep driver says, I ain't going back through that woods again. And not alone, he says, I want some firepower. So they looked around and he says, you go ride with him and you can come back tomorrow in the daylight. Come back tomorrow, but at least get this message back to the back over there. Well, it was what they call the Black Forest in Germany, and this is what he had driven through and he was shot at when he was going through there. Well, I didn't want to go, but orders are orders. So I crawled in the back of the Jeep with my rifle, and away we went. Well, I didn't sit in the front seat. I forgot if somebody else was sitting in the front seat or not. Must have been because I was in the back. And I had my M16 laying across my legs, and one leg on top of it and one leg underneath it, so it wouldn't fly out. And we started out all right, but boy, when he got into that Black Forest, he was doing about 60, going through there like crazy. And if somebody had shot, I could have never shot back because I was, hey, I was hanging on for dear life. We got back, you get shot at. But that was a wild ride, I'll tell you that. He was just crazy. It's funny we didn't roll over because
You tell him when you were going across Germany, you were with Patton, 3rd Army.
oh yeah.
George Patton.
Yeah, when I went across Germany, I was with Patton's 3rd Army, 89th Infantry Division, but it was blood and guts, they called him. He come when we was stationed in France, when I had my foot problems. He says he had a very good outfit, but he says, I'll make a good outfit out of them. He says, then he ordered us to go into Germany. It was called Blood and Guts. He made an outfit out of us. We went across Germany. We didn't lose too many men. We did lose some. But it scared me to think how this one guy knew that he was going to die, and he knew it. Why he knew it, I don't know.
Rabbit coat.
Shall we have dinner?
Hold on 1 second. One more. The rabbit coat.
Oh, what about the rabbit coat?
Oh.
The rabbit coat.
Oh, yeah, during across Germany, we went to a factory, and they were making coats out of rabbit fur, and I thought, gee whiz, all we had, it was wintertime, and all we had was this field jacket. Well, I turned around and we went to this factory there where they were making these rabbit jackets. So I got me one of them rabbit jackets. And I put it on, then I put my field jacket over the top of it. Man, I was warm as toast.
It was really long hair, and there were tan and black and whites and spots.
I don't know what kind of rabbits it was, but they had multiple colored fur on them. They were big rabbits because I shot at one time. I didn't know. My buddy was there. He wanted to see. It was about 1,000 feet off, and he wanted to see. He almost got it. He was just a little low. If he'd have been up a little bit higher, he'd have got him. But once that bullet went zinging by him, that rabbit, why he was gone.
He brought that coat home, and I wore it a few times. He worked up in St. Paul after that, and I wore it a few times, and I had a fur coat. But the dang thing started losing hair all over the place.
After it got old, yeah, it started shedding. But while I was wearing it there, man, that kind of saved me a little bit because it was cold out there. Them field jackets, that's all they are, is canvas, and there was no heavy lining or anything in them to keep you warm. And well, when I put that thing in there underneath that jacket, that was warm. That jacket was warm after that.
What about guarding the ammo plant down in, what is it, South Carolina? Guarding the ammunition plant, manufacturing plant, with the recessed doorways, and the officer that came around and surprised people?
Yeah, I forget just how that was.
Was that in Mississippi?
I put a stop to him, but I forgot how I did that.
You'd sneak up on people when you're on guard duty?
Yeah.
You'd hide in the recessed doorways
Yeah.
and then jump out?
Yeah, we'd have to stand guard duty, and a lot of in these barracks buildings that was loaded with ammunition, and this one officer, he had a habit of sneaking around, standing in the doorway, and as you wouldn't walk by, he'd take your gun away from you, you know. And forgot, I fooled him. I caught him one time. Oh yeah, I turned around and I let him have my gun, but I turned around and I had a pistol besides. So when he got my gun, I had that pistol. He had my gun, but I had the pistol pointed right at him. He never did it again.
And when they took prisoners, they had a way of tying them up to a tree without any rope or anything. When you took prisoners, how you did that with their feet and stuff around the tree, and or how it was, I don't remember. But
Yeah.
you,
Oh yeah. Well, there's a way that I could take you out here and put you in a position, and I guarantee you that I can walk away and you can't follow me. You'll be there until I come back, believe it or not.
What about the officer that did the rifle inspection? They grabbed guns
yeah.
from people?
A lot of times it was a rifle inspection, and this one was smart aleck lieutenant was come up to you, you know, and of course you was holding your rifle like this, see, and he'd come along and take it away from you by swinging his arm. Well, once we got together and we figured out how he would do it, we could stop him from doing that. Because if you hung on to it, he'd bawl you out. He says, I'm taking that rifle in my possession. And he says, you let go of it. Well, guys couldn't do it fast the way he was doing it. So I turned around and I told one of the boys, I says, put on a pair of gloves. And we turned around and inside the barracks, the guys would hold her there and slapped the gun away from us, see. Well, I turned around and I was watching, and his first movement was a muscle up in the top of your shoulder. If you're going to take a gun away, this muscle up here is the first one that expands. And I turned around and I practiced a little bit, you know, with some of the guys. And he come around to me one time and I thought, well, boy, he wants it, he can have it. So I held it like this, and as soon as I saw that muscle tighten up, I did like this. And he grabbed that gun and he ripped his hand open because all he got was the top sight. The rest of the gun was hitting the ground, and he got the, after he put a bloody handkerchief over it, and he went pretty slow after that.
That was an 03 Springfield?
Yeah, the sights on them was
Exposed.
exposed and there.
Thank you for sharing, Grandpa.
Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you.
I got maps.
About it.